In this video, I'm gonna talk about the books that I read in both April and May. So the first book that I read is Jurassic Park by Michael Crichton. So the story is about a rich man who wants to build an amusement park. Only it's not a regular one, it's one with real-life dinosaurs that are roaming an island and people will just see them in their natural habitat. He has done this using scientists that reconstructed those dinosaurs from an ancient DNA sample, and with such an ambitious project, things will certainly not go to plan. The main theme of this novel is how far the human race will go in science and technology just because they can. It discusses so many ideas and there are so many philosophical discussions that makes this novel much deeper than a thriller. And there are so many scientific discussions in this book. It even has tables and graphs, but they are blended so seamlessly into the story that you won't feel that it's too much. And I think this is a special recipe for Michael Crichton, who is one of my favorite authors of all time. He manages to teach you a thing or two about science while keeping you on the edge of your seat reading his books. They are so thrilling, and this book is so scary at some parts. All of this is put together in a way that will make you engaged and you will not feel bored by this book. I'm definitely gonna read the second part of this book, The Lost World, someday in the near future. Next book I read is a book that I don't see often on the internet. It's called The Pillars of the Earth by Ken Follett, who after I read this book has become one of my favorite authors, and I'm definitely gonna read more of his books. Now this book is very big. It's about 1,000 pages long. However, the story is engaging and thrilling enough that you won't feel like you're reading a tome. The story of this book is about building a cathedral in the 12th century England. It sounds really boring, but the writing is so good. It transformed this boring premise into a very gripping story from the very first pages. The prologue is action-packed and it will get you into the story very fast. There are so many things in this book. It has everything. It turns out building a cathedral in the 12th century is a much more complicated endeavor than expected. Not only because of the massive engineering and work required to build it, but because of the schemes and the plans of the people behind this building. There are so many conflicted intentions and drama behind the scenes. In this book, you will see the struggle of life during the 12th century. You will see that life in the 12th century was really not easy. There's simply too much violence in that world. And you will care for some characters and really hate some others. The character development and building in this book was so good. Some of these characters will stay with you for a long time. However, this book has some really disturbing scenes. It's definitely gonna make a lot of people uncomfortable, and it has all the trigger warnings imaginable, because those were really dark times. There is graphic violence in this book. All I can say is Ken Follett is a master storyteller, and he made me want to read even more than 1,000 pages. And there are 3 more books in this series, and I'm definitely gonna check them out. Next book I read is called Ninth House by Leah Bardugo. Now, this author is very famous online. She has written so many YA books, and this one is her first adult fantasy. But the thing is, this book is not simply a fantasy. It's a murder mystery with supernatural elements, and by supernatural we mean magic. So the story is about a girl who is accepted in Yale University, and given her credentials, she's the last expected person to be inducted into this university. Then she discovers that there are magical societies or houses in Yale University, and she has been chosen by the ninth house that oversees and kind of supervises the other houses so that magic will not hurt people or go out of hand. And she is chosen because she has a trait of seeing ghosts. Now, reading this book was a really difficult task. The first 100 pages were really slow and really hard to get into because immediately you will feel that the author is so pretentious. The author is trying to be very smart and she's throwing names and difficult words left and right, which threw me off a couple of times. I wanted to stop reading this book so many times, but I kept reading to find out what the hype is about. Also, I felt that it was vague on purpose. So many things and information were kept from the reader. And that's why I felt very disconnected with this world, because nothing is really making sense. However, I think I'm thankful that I persevered with reading this book, because after the 100-page mark, the book took off and I really started to like it. And even though this is almost 500 pages long, I flew through it after the 100-page mark. However, I didn't like the murder mystery in this book. I found it to be mediocre, and I didn't like the solution of this murder at the end. But I really liked the backstories of both of the main characters, and I understand why this is an adult book, because it was dark. I think I'm gonna read the next book in the series just to find out if it's any better. Next book I read is Shutter Island by Dennis Lehane. This book is a psychological thriller. So the story begins with two US Marshals who are summoned to an insane asylum in an island to investigate the disappearance of a patient. However, they discover quickly that things are not what they seem, and there is something wrong going on in this island. Now, this book has been turned into a famous movie with the same name, starring Leonardo DiCaprio, and I have already watched the movie before reading the book. And this ruined the book for me, because the main and shocking plot twist at the end was revealed to me. And I think that this plot twist is the best thing about this book. The fact is, I was bored throughout reading this book. Not because I know what the story is about, but because of the way it was written. It was written in a very slow pace, and this made me so bored. However, the book is very atmospheric. You will live in this insane asylum with the main characters. The main theme of this book is the horrors of wars, on the psychology of the ex-soldiers and what war did to them. There are some really sad scenes in this book, especially at the end. All in all, it's a psychological thriller with a bit of a slow pace and a very big, satisfying plot twist at the end. The next book I read is The Book of M by Ping Shepherd. This book is a post-apocalyptic novel with a fantasy twist instead of a science fiction one. So suddenly people start losing their shadows. When their shadows disappear, they slowly start forgetting things until they lose all of their memories and all of their personalities with it, and they become a shell and zombie-like. The fantasy twist in this book is that when people forget things, things disappear from reality. The premise seems really good, but the execution was not. I really struggled reading this book. I kept drifting off and I could not stay interested in the story. I thought that the book was too long for its premise, and I was not convinced by some characters' choices in this book. I felt they were over dramatic at some parts. I didn't like the main characters, and I really could not pinpoint the exact reason that I didn't like this book. Maybe it was the pacing or the characters or just the writing style. I also felt that there are intentionally vague elements in this book, and I really hate that. And as for the ending, I really hated it, even though it was quite a shock, but I really hated the ending of this book. Next book I read is The Vegetarian by Han Kang. This book has won the first ever International Booker Prize, and the story is about a woman who decides to become completely vegetarian and the struggle she faces when she tells her husband and family of her decision. However, we don't actually see what she thinks because she doesn't narrate her story. The book is divided into 3 parts. Each part is narrated by someone who knows this main character, and they describe what she goes through. And now I think the main theme of this book is not to be vegetarian, because the main character faces symptoms of mental illness, and we see how the people around her are reacting. And I felt that the book has no plot. I found it to be very dull and boring, and I don't really know why it won the Booker Prize. I think it's overhyped. There are some really disturbing and disgusting scenes, and the book ended so abruptly, and I felt like, what was I reading? I really didn't like this book. Next book I read is Wrong Place, Wrong Time by Gillian McAllister. This book is a time travel thriller. So the story is about a mother who witnesses her son murdering a man. When the mother sleeps off exhaustion of the night, she wakes up to discover that she has traveled 2 days back in time, before the murder ever happened. She tries to find out why her son murdered this strange man. However, when she sleeps again, she finds out that she has returned even further back in time, and so on. So she is trying to figure out why she's returning back in time, and what is she meant to find out? This is a very interesting premise. I really like the writing style. The book started really strong, and I felt that the author nailed the time travel concept, the concept of living life backwards, and there were some really good plot twists. However, the book was too long, and I felt a little bit bored, and I felt that the book could have been shorter to keep the fast pace. Next, I read 4 books, and they are Anne of Green Gables, Upgrade, Gone Girl, and Inferno. And I'm not gonna talk about these books because I talked about them in my previous video where I filmed a vlog of me reading those 4 books. Please check it out, the link is in my description. And thank you very much for watching this far. I hope you like my video. Please like and subscribe, and happy reading.